Okay, so you've shared some seriously spooky source material with me about this Santa Compaña, this procession of the dead, and all this from Galician folklore. But before we kind of like dive into the specifics, what people are actually claiming to see and what it all means, I'm curious, like, what was it that initially stood out to you about this whole legend when you first, like, I don't know, stumbled across it?
For me, it's how this legend, the fact that it's been passed down through so many generations, it kind of gives us this like glimpse into, the Galician psyche, right?
Yeah.
Like their beliefs about life, death, what comes after, all of that. And it's like, it's not just a scary story. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
reflects something deeper, I think, about their culture, about their history.
Yeah. Yeah, I get you. And we've got all these different like sources too, which is so cool. There's Wikipedia, and then we've got firsthand accounts, and like even some people on YouTube have done like analyses of this whole spectral procession thing. It's wild.
It's really remarkable, yeah.
You mentioned firsthand accounts. Like, what kind of experiences are people actually like describing when they claim to have seen the Santa Compaña? What do they say?
So in many of these accounts, right, people describe the Santa Compaña as this like silent procession. And these figures, they're shrouded in black, like totally faces completely obscured, can't see anything. And they each carry a candle. And it's always described as flickering, casting this like eerie glow. And get this, some accounts even mention the air getting heavy, but not just heavy, heavy with the scent of wax, like as they pass.
So we've got this visual, right? The dark robes, flickering candles, spooky, and then you add this whole other layer of the sense of smell. The wax almost makes it feel, I don't know, more real, like something you could almost reach out and touch.
Yeah, and that's a common thing. That's a common thread in a lot of these encounters, this feeling of the Santa Compaña existing, I don't know, like almost on the edge of perception,
Yeah.
It's like there but not. And some people even talk about this overwhelming silence surrounding the procession, broken only by like the sound of chains dragging along the ground.
Oh God, no. So not only would you see them, but you might hear them too and smell the wax. Oh,
Huh.
that's terrifying.
And it's not just what you see and hear, right? Some people describe this sudden drop in temperature, and it's like out of nowhere as the Santa Compaña gets closer. Or, and this is really creepy to me, this feeling of dread so strong, it's almost like it's paralyzing.
That's wild. It's really interesting to me, how these accounts, they all kind of weave together, like the sensory details, like we were talking about, with these more internal emotional experiences. It's like the fear itself, the dread, becomes this tangible thing.
Yeah, exactly. And here's another thing. At the head of this procession, right, leading the way, most of the time people describe this spectral figure. It's like the authority figure, and it's known as the Estadea. But often, not always, but often, there's a living person at the front too. Like they're forced to carry a cross in a cauldron.
Okay, wait. A living person forced to walk with the dead? That's horrifying.
It is. And they say the face of the living person is just like tormented, like they're trapped. And it's said that the cauldron they're carrying, it either holds holy water or, get this, the oils used for last rites. I mean, how creepy is that?
So, like, what's the, I don't know, the significance of that detail? Like, whether it's holy water or the oils, what does that tell us about, like, why the Santa Compaña even appears in the first place? What do you think?
Well, a lot of people believe that detail, that little detail about what the person is carrying, it points to why the Santa Compaña appears at all. Like they're a harbinger of death. Some people even think they only appear to people who are about to die.
Yeah.
And some versions of the legend, it's even worse. They say the Santa Compaña is there to collect souls, for the afterlife.
Oh, no, thank you. That's a chilling thought. Just walking along, minding your own business, maybe on your phone, and then boom, this spectral procession. It's almost like this terrifying premonition, like a sign that your time is up.
Right, and the thing is, this isn't just some like Galician thing either. The Santa Compaña, or at least variations of this whole spectral procession, are known throughout Spain. They just have different names in different regions.
Right.
Like they're called Cuestia in Asturias, Estantiga in Castilla, And it just, I don't know, it really makes you think. It's belief. It's everywhere, all across Spain, which is wild if you think about it.
It really is. I mean, you start to wonder, right? Is everyone in Spain just like bumping into these spectral processions all the time? Or are there, I don't know, certain people who are more likely to see them? You know what I mean?
That's a really good question. And yeah, some of the source material you gave me, it actually mentions a few different kinds of people who are said to be, I don't know, more susceptible to seeing the Santa Compaña, more likely to encounter them.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so like, what are some of the theories there? Like, why some people and not others?
Well, one theory and this is kind of a creepy one if you ask me, is that it has to do with being near death. Some people believe the Santa Compaña, they appear to those who are nearing their end, almost like, I don't know how else to put it, but like a grim reaper, like in those old stories. Or, ready for this, some people even say that the Santa Compaña, they tried to get living people to join the procession.
Oh, no, thank you. So you're telling me not only are you vulnerable because, Chuckles, you're about to die, but then, like, on top of that, the veil between the living and the dead is, like, thinner for you, and you're more likely to see this stuff. Is that the idea?
That's kind of the gist, yeah. Like, as you get closer to death, that other world, it gets closer to you too. But that's just one theory. Another one, and this one is really interesting, is that it's about what they call a quantum leap.
Okay, a quantum leap. Go on.
Right. So, like, some people say that if you go through, like, a huge physical or mental shock, it could be like a near-death experience, or some other kind of traumatic event, anything that really shakes you to your core. It's like your perception, it changes. And suddenly, boom, you can see the Santa Compaña, you can see other supernatural things too.
So trauma, like, cracks open this window. It's like a glitch in the matrix, and you can see the code. Okay, so those are people who maybe weren't always able to see this stuff, but something happened. But are there people who are just, like, born with the ability to see them?
Well, that's what they say in Galicia. They say there are these people, and they're called beduaros. And the beduaros, they've always been able to see the Santa Compaña, like literally from birth.
From birth? Wow, and how would you even know? Like if you were a beduero, if you could see them?
It's a good question. Well, one belief, and it's a little weird, is that it's because of a mistake during their baptism. So like when they were a baby, they were accidentally given, get this, the oils meant for the dead instead of the holy oils.
Oh, wow. Talk about a big whoopsie.
So,
a little mistake with, like, some seriously spooky consequences. Are there any other explanations for why someone might be a beduero?
yeah, some sources suggest that it's genetic.
Yeah.
Like it's passed down through families. Or sometimes it's just, I don't know how else to say it, but a spiritual sensitivity that you're just born with. Like some people, it's like they're tuned to a different frequency, They pick up on things that other people they don't. It's like having another sense, but, a spooky one.
Okay, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. So, okay, let's say, for whatever reason, you see the Santa Compaña. What do you do? Is it just like, game over, you're gonna be part of this ghostly crew forever? Or are there ways to, protect yourself, fight back even?
Well, that's where it gets really, really interesting. People in Galicia, they've passed down all these rituals, these beliefs about how to ward off the Santa Compaña.
So even though it's terrifying, you're not totally powerless. There are things you can do. I love that. What are some of the things people do to protect themselves?
So one common one, and this is all about symbolism, right? It's to use religious symbols. Like if you make the sign of the cross and say, Cruz ya tengo, which means I already have a cross, you're good. It's like you're telling the leader of the Santa Compaña, the Esteria, nope, not interested. Don't even think about handing me your cross. Because, see, they say if you take that cross, you're a goner. You're going to be stuck in that procession forever.
It's like saying, thanks, no thanks, buddy. It's fascinating, isn't it? These beliefs, they give you a way to, I don't know, take control. Like you said, it's all symbolic, but still, it's like you're saying, I'm not afraid of you. You're not in charge here. What are some other ways to, like, protect yourself? I'm really curious now.
Well, another one, it's even simpler. Keep your arms crossed over your chest.
Really? Just like that?
Yep. They say that creates this, like, protective barrier just by crossing your arms. It's like, nope, you can't touch me.
So much of this is about symbolism. Like you said, drawing these lines in the sand. This is me, this is you, don't cross over. Are there any others?
There are, yeah. Some sources say that if you keep your hands busy, like hold a stone in each hand, anything really, that'll stop them from being able to force their cross on you.
It's all about action. Like, you're not just thinking about protecting yourself, you're actually doing something about it. You're like, not today, Santa Compaña, not today.
I love it. So, okay, what if you can't do any of that? Like, what if you freeze up or you're not near anything you can grab?
So some people believe that if you can get to a crucero, you'll be safe.
A crucero?
What's that? Right, so a crucero is like one of those stone crosses. You see them all over Galicia. They're usually at crossroads or in cemeteries, places like that. Sacred places, And because they're, like, already blessed, the Santa Compaña, they can't get you there.
Okay, so you got to get to holy ground, basically. Makes sense. It's like those places have their own kind of power, but what if you're not near a crucero? What if you're just out in the open?
Honestly, some sources say if that happens, your only hope is to run. Run like hell. And don't look back. Just put as much distance as you can between yourself and the Santa Compaña. I mean, can you blame them? I'd be running too. Okay, so we've talked about like the literal ways people understand the Santa Compaña, right? Like these encounters. But there's got to be more to it than that, right? I mean, these stories have stuck around for so long. There's got to be like a deeper meaning here, you know? Don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you don't stick around for centuries just by being a spooky story,
Yeah.
right? There's
Yeah.
something more there for sure.
Right. Okay, so if it's not just about like scaring people, what else is going on? Like, I know you mentioned earlier, way back in part 1, something about how, I don't know, religious beliefs in Galicia, they've changed a lot over time. Could that have something to do with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So like way back before Catholicism was a big thing in Galicia, they had all these older traditions like pagan beliefs and stuff like that. And those older beliefs, they were really tied to nature, like they were all about spirits and the land and, the whole cycle of life and death and everything.
That's interesting. So, like, how do you think those older beliefs would have viewed the Santa Compaña? Would it have been like a totally evil thing for them, or could it have been something, I don't know, more neutral, like a natural part of the world?
That's a great question. And that's actually what some scholars are looking at now.
Yeah.
They're wondering if maybe the Santa Compaña, it's like an echo of those older beliefs
That's
from
true.
way back when. So not necessarily a bad thing, but just like a part of the natural order of things, like maybe a sign that at certain times in certain places, the line between this world and the other world, it gets a little blurry. You know what I mean?
So, not something you need to run from. At least not always. But then you were saying that, Catholicism comes in and it becomes the dominant religion. What happens to the Santa Compaña then?
Well, I mean, one of the things that happens when a new religion comes in is that they start to look at the old stories, the old beliefs, and they reinterpret them. They look at them through the lens of the new religion. So with the Santa Compaña, which might have once been seen as something neutral, maybe even sacred, it's like they became, well, demonized. They became a symbol of, like sin and damnation and all that.
It's like they went from being this neutral force to being like a warning from the church, like behave yourself or the Santa Compaña is going to get you.
Exactly. And think about it.
Yeah.
That would have been a powerful message for the church to send, right? I mean, it's like they're taking this old, familiar story, something that people probably grew up hearing about, and they're giving it this whole new meaning. And that probably made it a lot easier to convert people, like, join us. We can protect you from the scary ghost procession.
So smart. Okay, so the church, they kind of give the Santa Compaña a makeover. They give it this whole new spooky reputation. And now it's a symbol of everything you should avoid, right?
Right. And it reminds us that these stories, they're not frozen in time. Like even though they're passed down through generations, they change. They evolve. They get shaped by the cultures and the people, the times, everything that they're a part of.
That's such a good point. Okay, so we've got these two interpretations now, right? We've got that older one where maybe the Santa Compaña wasn't such a bad guy after all, and then this newer one where it's all about fear and judgment and everything. Do you think there's any, I don't know, I'm really curious, is there any evidence that people today are starting to think about the Santa Compaña in, a different way again?
That's a really interesting question. And, there is. I mean, if you look at what people are writing and researching these days, there's definitely a renewed interest in the Santa Compaña. And it's not just from a religious perspective or anything. It's more like people are interested in it from, I don't know how to say it other than a folklore perspective. And anthropology, they're looking at it as a part of Galician culture.
Yeah. So less about proving if it's real or not and more about understanding what it means, right? Like what it tells us about ourselves, about Galician history, about how humans deal with stuff they're afraid of, stuff they can't explain.
Exactly. People are looking at all the different versions of the legend, the regional differences, and they're trying to understand why it's so powerful, why it still fascinates people.
Well, the Santa Compaña isn't just this thing out there in the world. It's like a mirror, right? It reflects something back at us. It makes us think about big stuff, deep stuff, life, death, all of it.
You said it. It really does. And maybe that's why it's stuck around for so long, because it makes us think about those big questions, those mysteries, and maybe even find a little bit of, I don't know, wonder in the face of the unknown.
That's beautifully put. So yeah, the Santa Compaña, it's spooky, no doubt about it. But it's also a reminder that some things, they're always going to be a little bit mysterious. And that's okay, right? I mean, where's the fun in knowing everything?
Exactly. Sometimes the unknown is way more interesting.
So true. Well, I think that about wraps it up for our depth dive into the Santa Compaña. Until next time.